Hello and welcome again. In this video we're going to see how to configure a DHCP server in your Cisco router. So as we know, DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. It's a network service that allows you to configure your machines like computers and other devices in your network in a dynamic or automatic way. So it means that you allow the computer to obtain all the IP configurations in a dynamic way from a server. Okay, so in order to understand just how these concepts are working, we can see that in this image we can see here that this computer make different messages or different communications in order to obtain or to get the IP configuration or his IP address. First of all, the computer or the machine sends a discover message or request to the DHCP server. In this case, it doesn't matter if it's configured in a router or a server like a Linux machine or Windows server machine. That doesn't matter, but we were talking about the service. Then the server responds with an offer, meaning that the service says, I am here, I'm disponible, I'm available if you want to get your IP configuration. The computer then sends a request to get the IP address. Then the server sends and acknowledge the machine with the IP configurations. DHCP listens in port 67 using sorry, this is the P, meaning UDP protocol. In this other image we can see that here, first of all, the computer, it doesn't have any address. So it just uses the default address 0.0.0 and it sends a broadcast message. This broadcast message is discover, DHCP discover, to a broadcast address. Then if we have a DHCP server installed or deployed in our network, this server will receive this discover and will send an offer, meaning that it says to the machine, this is now the DHCP server with this address in this situation, says to the machine, I am here, I am a DHCP server, I can help you to configure your IP or to get your IP configuration. Again, the computer sends another DHCP message or request called the DHCP request. Then the DHCP server again replies with the DHCP ACK or acknowledgement. All these messages are represented in an acronym called DORA. So whenever you heard about DORA, basically you know that this means discover, offer, request, acknowledgement. That's good. Now in this, I'm using Cisco Packet Tracer software in order to simulate this network. So we have here two networks. These two local LANs or two local area networks, this one and this one. And the other network is just a link between this router and this router. The first network is 192.168.1.0/24. The second is 192.6.2.0/24. And the network here is 10.0.0.0.30. I have configured all these interfaces and make them enable in order to save time. The first one here, I gave this interface .1, meaning 192.168.1.1, and the same goes here. This interface got .1 and this second interface got .2 in this network address. Also here .2.1 in this interface. That's great. So what I'm gonna do is I will give you how to configure DHCP servers in this router. So this router 1, we will make it to be our DHCP server. Then after that, if I want these machines to allocate the DHCP service or configurations, I will make this router a DHCP relay or relay agent, meaning it will take this requests from these machines and send them to this router in order to get the configuration for this network. Good. So now I will go to this router. I will enable my configuration. Now I will say, first of all, if you want to configure DHCP, there is we can say 6 steps that you can remember in order to make it this easy. First, you will exclude all the addresses that you need. That means that because basically for DHCP you just create a pool of or a range of addresses that will be allocated, that will be offered to the machines in a network. So, but for example, like this IP address and this IP address for this DNS server, we make these addresses static, meaning you don't need DHCP. We don't want a DHCP server to give another machine this address because it's already used by the router interface. And also this static address of the DNS server, it's already used by this machine. So we don't want to give it to another machine. So that's impossible. So what we do is say IP DHCP, IP DHCP exclude addresses, and I will say 192.168. Exclude from 1 to 10. We don't want these addresses to be, or from here we just here we create 192.168.1.1 from this start from this address to this range .1.10. So meaning we want to exclude all these 10 addresses for DHCP or from the DHCP pool. So DHCP will not be able to deploy or to assign these IP addresses to the machines. Then we need to say again, then we need to create a DHCP pool. In order to do this, we say DHCP pool, and let's give it a name. So let's say pool PLAN 1. You hit enter. Now let's say we wanna enter a network of 192.168.1.0 and the mask is .0. Now what we need to do is, after we create this pool for this network, now we need to add our configuration, because DHCP is capable of configuring a machine with its IP address and a default gateway address and a DNS address. So we'll add them all here. How to do that is by AP default, or we just say, because we already enter the DHCP configuration mode, so we need just to say default router, and in our case the default gateway is this interface of the router. So we can say 192.168.1.1, hit enter. Now let's add the DNS server to the DHCP configuration. Now to say that, you just say DNS server, then our DNS address is 1.2. Now we can now go and test if this works in this network. I will allow this computer to get the DHCP from this router, from this server. To get the IP address configuration from this server. Now let's see if it's work. I will just go to desktop and IP configuration. From here you can see that you can add a static address to this computer, but in our case I wanna assign the IP addresses from DHCP. Now as you can see that we successfully allocated this DHCP or this IP from our DHCP pool. We started from 192.168.1.11, meaning it's because we already excluded from 1 to 10, and the DHCP starts to assign addresses from 11. And this is our default gateway that we have configured. It is 192.168.1.1, and this the DNS server. Let's go and see if it's working the another computer, and we just click on DHCP. Now you see that this computer got the .12. Okay, so meaning it works. What I'm gonna do now is to also make this server to be able to assign IP addresses to this network. So you can see that this is a different network. So what we will need to do is first of all exclude again the addresses and create a specific pool for this, another pool for this network. Now let's come here and say exclude, say IP DHCP exclude. So this network has the address of 192.168.2.1. starting from this address, meaning exclude from this address to 192.168.2.10. Now let's say network again, or IP DHCP, and let's create a pool for PL LAN 2, another pool for this network. I call that PLAN 2. Now let's add the network address. It's 192.168.2.0 25 255.255.255.250. Now if we can say, if I came here, this configuration, it's not completed yet, because we also need to, let's just try to see what's gonna happen. You can say that it doesn't work successfully. Why? Because you see 162.254 and just a random address from the APIPA. This is called the APIPA address, meaning that the computer, if it doesn't get any static or DHCP or any address from DHCP, it just uses this automatic address from APIPA called the automatic. Let me just search for the term because I didn't remember. It's called automatic private IP addressing. It's a technology that allows the computer to just have at least some address to be able to communicate in a network. So what we need to do to make our computer allocate the DHCP configuration address from DHCP is to come here, and First, we need to enter this interface and add a command IP helper address to make this router be able to talk with this router in order to make these machines to allocate the addresses from DHCP. Meaning we will gonna make this router a relay agent, meaning it relies these machines with the DHCP server. In order to do that, first of all we need to enter this fast0/0 interface, and we say f0/0, then we say IP helper address, and we need to give it this router address. So we will use this interface here. I'm gonna say 110.0.0.1, which is the address of this interface of this router. Now I'm gonna hit enter and say exit to right. Now we will not be able to okay, let's see. Now, in order to make this work, we also need to configure our routing protocol in these two routers. For this, I will use just a RIP or RIP protocol. I'm going to use version 2 and say network 1 is 192.168.2.0. Then the second router network is 9.0.0.0, and say I'm gonna come here with the same in the next router. I'm gonna say router RIP version 2 network 10.0.0.0, and the second network is 192.168.1.0. Now if I came and test if we can get the address IP address configuration from the DHCP server, I will just click on again static, then I will test dynamic way DHCP. Now you can see that we have the allocated address from the DHCP server, and you can see that because we didn't configure in this LAN the default gateway and the DNS server, the computers are not able to get these IP addresses or this configuration. I hope this video helped you understand and know how to configure a DHCP service in your router. Thanks for watching.